If you look back at your life, you were actually incredibly young when your anxiety began. I mean, sort of 5 or 6.
Yeah, it's difficult to put a name on it.
Yeah.
But my upbringing was phenomenal. I couldn't have asked for anything more. But in terms of an internal experience, I made everything seemed to be just a massive problem. And it wasn't a sense of good or bad. It was a sense of real doom about if things didn't go well and if things didn't go right. And I guess over the years, I reinforced that and made it more and more severe, and to the point where, you know, that when you're younger, things just pass. When you get older, you tend to find a way to keep hold of them, and they hang around.
So are you struggling at school?
Yeah, I found the habit of struggling was in me. It manifested everywhere. Whenever I came across more or less a situation that I didn't have an answer to, I couldn't work out, most people would come up with the response of, that's life. You know, don't worry about that, that's life. For me, it would be like, it's not good enough. And it's there that I'd sort of get lost. So, you know, anything to do with things you couldn't change in the past, anything to do with the kind of mortality of human beings, those sort of things that you just normally people would be like, well, just leave it. That for me wasn't enough. Yeah.
And so when you get to sort of the level in the game that you did, and having that mentality of things aren't good enough, I mean, did that push you to the level that you got to, do you think, or was that not the reason?
No, it's most of the stuff I did, extra training and all that stuff was counterproductive, because
really?
You can ask my kicking coach. I pretty much we were sort of in a stage where it was like, this is going great, and then he'd be like, that next 2 hours is for you. Because this is great, you know it's great. The 2 hours is to settle this. The only time I wasn't struggling mental health-wise in terms of that way was between the 2 whistles. But I made this idea that by suffering, that meant the 2 hours went well. So I just kept saying, well, I'll suffer a bit more. Why not? You know, you think, well, if I'm really struggling, then this gives me the right to say it's going to go well. It has no logic. No, not at all.
Yeah.
So how were you in the hours leading up to a big match?
I don't know if I speak for a lot of people in this, but a lot of people face that kind of, it's that unknown. You desperately want to. The problem is instead of exploring the unknown, you're trying to define it. So instead of just preparing for it, you're actually trying to live in it. And most of the guys in the change room, it's very difficult to stop yourself from trying to live in that future and actually define it before it happens. And you feel weak because all your potential's here and now. And when you try and start living in a fantasy world, you can do nothing about it.
About what might happen.
About what might happen, what if this, what if that. But when it actually happens on the field between the whistles, you just deal with it.
So did you nearly walk?
Yeah, I would have. A lot of the guys would be very anxious, but for me, I just, because of my obsessive tendency, I would not let it go. I'd just go deeper and deeper and deeper. And after a while, when you realise I was literally trying to find a way to define the future before it arrived, but not in a way of preparing, pack your bag, you know, do your stretches, that's fine. There's no issue with that. But I was literally everything to do with what may happen. I was trying to imagine myself that, and it just got to a point where it was too much. I can't do this. And you literally have almost no reason to go and play the game, because as far as you're concerned, it's too much, too big.
So did anybody say anything to you? How did you realise that you had a problem then, that you needed to get help?
I didn't. The same reason that I was saying at the time. I was saying, if I keep going through this, because then I'd play the weekend, I'd play the game, I'd manage to get out there and play it. Between the whistles, it would go well, because I just let go. And so I'd think, well, that's all part of being a rugby player. This is part of life.